shoegaze and grunge, two genres of music that emerged in the late 1980s and have stylistic origins from alternative rock. At first glance, it may seem like there are only some minor differences between the two genres. When looking into the dichotomy between the two genres further, I became more intrigued by the differences between them, so today I'll be comparing the two genres, discussing their origins, musical qualities, and key influencers. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that I got this idea from a YouTuber called Mr. B. As a history video producer who has an excellent series that compares two different cities, states, or nations, I thought it would be interesting to apply this dynamic to two different genres of music. I recommend checking his channel out if you are like me and love learning about history. Alright, without further ado, let's begin. Shoegaze's music origins can be traced back to genres such as indie rock, alternative rock, dream pop, psychedelic rock, and post-punk. Some groups that had a crucial influence on the genre include Husker Du, Dinosaur Jr., A.R. Kane, and the Jesus and Mary Chain. While all of these groups are prominent in the 1980s, influences on shoegaze can also be found in the reverberation of 1960s wall of sound. Musical origins of grunge can be identified in genres like punk rock, alternative rock, heavy metal, and noise rock. Groups such as Sonic Youth, Melvins, Mudhoney, Pixies, Black Sabbath, and Again Dinosaur Jr. were all influential to the grunge sound. Neil Young has even been called the godfather of grunge for releasing two albums in 1979 and 1990 that have now been classified as proto-grunge. The term shoegaze originates from the publication Sound and NME. It was based on the tendency for guitarists to be looking downwards staring at effects pedals during their gigs. However, some musicians who were classified as shoegaze artists found the term to be a pejorative, most notably Mickey Berenyi of Lush. Grunge is a term that has been used to describe bands dating back to the 1960s and is slang for dirt, or something that is repugnant. The word would later become associated with the sludgy sound of the American Pacific Northwest. Similar to shoegaze, there are a lot of prominent musicians classified as grunge that loathe the term, most notably Kurt Cobain. In terms of location, shoegaze originated mostly from the United Kingdom and Ireland, whereas grunge originated mostly from Seattle, Washington. Shoegaze music isn't exactly known for its lyricism. One key feature with many shoegaze songs is the de-emphasis on vocals, treating the voice as another instrument in overwhelming waves of sound. Oftentimes, lyrics are difficult to hear and are sometimes speculated to be completely random or meaningless. When lyrics can be made out, themes of melancholia, introspection, and sentimentality can be observed. On the other hand, themes and lyricism play an essential role in grunge music. Lyrics tend to be easier to make out when listening to grunge and often invoke themes including nihilism, angst, derangement, and desire for freedom. The sound of both shoegaze and grunge music can be characterized by overwhelmingly loud and reverberated guitars. However, between the two genres, this distortion manifests itself in different ways. In shoegaze, instrumentation blends together, oftentimes creating a swirling or droning texture. Oftentimes, guitar pedals or the vibrato arm on the guitar are used to bend sound. The Fender Jazzmaster is the preferred guitar for many shoegazers due to the ability to move the vibrato arm while strumming. As explained earlier, vocals often become part of the wash of sound. However, in some cases, vocals are juxtaposed with the distortion, sounding pristine or even gentle. Grunge has much more of a lo-fi or raw sound to it. It is much easier to distinguish between the guitar and bass, and vocals can be more clearly heard. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that lyrics are necessarily easier to make out, as many grunge singers had a slurred or growling vocal style. The dissonant power chord is often employed in conjunction with powerful amplifiers to create kind of a sludgy texture. Oftentimes, guitars are down-tuned to create a feeling of darkness, which may be enhanced with a ponderous or sinister bass line. While there are countless excellent shoegaze and grunge bands out there that deserve to be listened to, I've selected 3 influential bands to represent each genre. My Bloody Valentine is arguably the most influential shoegaze band, releasing Loveless in 1991, one of the most celebrated albums of the 1990s. Known for their androgynous vocals and frontman Kevin Shields' popularization of tremolo pitch bending, Shields was known to have used more than 30 guitar pedals to create unique soundscapes. Slowdive tends to be a bit less fuzzy than My Bloody Valentine, with lyrics that sound crystalline. Their most influential album is probably Souvlaki, released in 1993. It has a beautifully mellow and dreamy sound to it. Ride is another pioneering shoegaze band. Their take on shoegaze tends to be noisier and more psychedelic than MBV or Slowdive, which can be heard in their debut 1990 record Nowhere. In grunge music, Nirvana is probably the most popular band. Releasing Nevermind in 1991, the same year as Loveless, the album was a cornerstone of the grunge genre. Notable for often following a quiet, loud, quiet dynamic between verses and choruses, one can hear that Nirvana's influences are rooted in punk. Alice in Chains is another prominent grunge group, and they definitely have a heavier sound when compared to Nirvana. One can tell that their influences are in heavy metal and occasionally the blues. Their most acclaimed release was the 1992 album Dirt. Then there is Soundgarden, who oftentimes fuses grunge with alternative rock and occasionally stoner rock. Their 1994 album Super Unknown is probably their most commemorated release. Black hole sun, won't you come? As sort of an honorable mention, the band Swervedriver really had one foot in the shoegaze camp while having the other foot in grunge. While they are probably closer to shoegaze than they are to grunge, they really do create a unique fusion, especially in their 1993 album Mezcal Head. One stark contrast between the two genres can be observed when examining commercial success. Shoegaze wasn't nearly as popular as grunge. For example, Loveless only peaked at number 24 on the UK album charts, while Nevermind peaked at number 7. Loveless didn't even chart in the United States, while Nevermind was a number 1 album there. Grunge music kind of developed its own subculture and fashion. Both shoegaze and grunge had relatively brief periods of success, with the former probably being slightly shorter than the latter. Shoegaze was most popular in the late 1980s and early 1990s, but was quickly pushed aside by both grunge and Britpop. Grunge, on the other hand, was most popular between the early to mid-1990s, but would fizzle out after bands like Soundgarden and Screaming Trees went on hiatus from releasing records and Kurt Cobain's suicide. Each genre has experienced some sort of revival after their initial decline. Shoegaze began to re-emerge in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and has continued to maintain a consistent audience ever since. If you look into the website Rate Your Music, you'll see that there have already been 101 shoegaze albums released in 2022, and we are only a quarter into the year. I hope we will continue to see this trend in the future. Grunge, by comparison, re-emerged more quickly than shoegaze did. Post-grunge emerged in the late 1990s and early 2000s, but kind of faded in popularity by the late 2000s. However, groups like Foo Fighters and Live continued to be popular. Since I brought up Foo Fighters, I just want to say rest in peace Taylor Hawkins. He was truly one of the greatest drummers of all time. It probably won't surprise anyone to hear that I'm definitely more of a shoegaze fan, but I do appreciate and enjoy grunge as well. Since most of my videos cover shoegaze bands, I'm sure most of my audience enjoys shoegaze music more as well. However, I am curious in the comments to see which genre you enjoy more and why. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell for more shoegaze content. Thank you for watching the video.